Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man. So, I actually have like a more recent event to show you guys. I have the American Cup, and it had a lot of like main players and stuff in it. So I went ahead and got the game for you, Wesley. So versus Jeffery Xiong. Yeah. So let's see if you guys are ready to go. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be, but as I always say at the top of the description, if you do want to jump right to the analysis, I do have that time stamped. And of course, for my people in the Philippines, I will say Maligayang pagdating sa mga chess, ladies and gentlemen. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon. Masaya kumikita kang muli. Hello ulit. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by, mugging tequila. Cool. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. Bam. So we got D4. We got knight to F6, C4, and white wins. No, I'm playing. Nah, I mean, it's a good way to play for white, but white doesn't just automatically win. So we got G6, G3. And this is actually the third most played move. I mean, it's still a very heavily played move. You're going to see, maybe just a simple knight to, coming to C3 or like a knight to F3. Maybe even some bishop to G5s. I mean, there's a lot of different options. Of course, you can't see E4 yet because there's no support for it. So, I mean, I think in some rare cases you might have F3, E4, but I mean, usually it's a knight to C3 with E4 type situation, which is what I play myself. We do have, like I said, we do have G3. We have C6, bishop to G2, and then we do have D5. So this is kind of like, it looks like so many different openings. It looks like, a King's Indian for white and for black. It looks like a Slav. It looks like the King's Indian. A little bit of modern Pierts. With some C6s. That's kind of how chess goes out of the opening. There's a lot of different openings that different openings resemble. So working on any kind of openings will really help you. With openings in general. Pawn takes D5, pawn takes D5. We do see knight to C3, bishop comes to G7. We see knight up to F3. We see castles by black, knight comes up to E5. And pretty much when you have this type of a situation, whether you're playing like a King's Indian or a Catalan or anything, knight to E5 is going to be a very desirable move because you're just, your whole point of fianchettoing this bishop is to try to, control the center from afar with the hyper-modern type situation. So this just completely opens up the bishop. It does make it, in some cases, when you're playing like Catalans, it does make it a little harder to start to kind of push your pawns on the queen side. We do have bishop to F5. Bishop comes to F4. We see knight to E4. Queen comes to B3. So, you see there is a lot of pressure coming on this D5 pawn. And so, black is trying to figure out, what they want to do to try to be defensive. We do see knight to C6. And then we do have queen taking D5. All very standard stuff. And then we actually see the novelty of the game in this position. As you guys can see, this is kind of a critical point in the game because it seems like there's literally so many trades. I mean, there's knight takes, there's bishop takes, there's knight taking here, there's queen taking. So, these types of positions you get into make things a little bit complicated, because, it's sometimes hard to know exactly what you want to try to take back or, how you want to try to start capturing. But we do see knight taking D4. And this is actually like not the best move to play. So I'm not sure if Xiong kind of like mixed up his, if he mixed up like, maybe some of his preparation or if he ran out of preparation. I'm not sure. But this actually allows white to get a very sizable advantage. So the bishop does take on E4. And this is actually something that Wesley so does take very full advantage of in this game. And so the queen takes D5, bishop takes D5, and then we do allow knight to come on to C2 with the check. But like I said, white is completely winning this position, and it's a nice piece. So we do see king coming up to D2. There really isn't a whole lot of better options because you don't want to scoot the king over because you do want to connect your rooks for the purposes of capturing back. So we do see knight taking A1. We see knight down to D3. Some of you guys might have been wondering, just take with the rook here first because, you're not worried about this. But the problem is you're going to have some issues you know, with your bishop being pinned to your king. So that's not going to be good. So like if we just go into that rook taking a1, you're going to see g5 backing the bishop up. That's something else too. You also have rook a or rook f to d8, and you're really not protecting this bishop. You're probably going to go e4, but you are going to be losing the bishop. So that's going to make things, you know, fairly even. So Wesley So definitely finds the exact right way to play this. So after the knight takes on a1, he does see knight to d3. We got e5, and because the e-pawn has been pushed, and like I mentioned before, you know, e6 would be like the pinning type of move after the rook move. You know, we are good to go. So the bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, knight takes e5. We got knight up to c2, and you know, things actually look not too bad for black. I mean, it looks like, you know, they're getting their knight out. You know, the rooks are going to start kind of swinging in. So I mean, it actually looks really good for black, but there is a very, very key move in this position here, and I'm very curious as to who can find it. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to guess and see what the key, it is a very key move in this position. Go ahead and do so. Okay, so there are a few moves in the position that are legitimate, but there is one like super gold move. The other moves are actually e4, just throwing like, you know, interference from this bishop to this knight, you know, but you are going to be getting some material back, so that's good. We do have bishop taking f7, which is another possibility. Just kind of asking the rook, does it want to take and, you know, get captured, stuff like that. But the super key move in the position is actually g4. So if you found g4, I think it would be a little bit of an easier move to find because your king is not castled over here. So you do kind of get the idea that, you know, you can start kind of throwing these pawns up and stuff like that. So like I said, I think it's a little bit of an easier move to find than, you know, like I said, if you were castled over there. But if you saw the move g4, you are super gangster, so you need to like sign up for one of these tournaments so that you can be on these guys' levels too. So the knight does come to b4. We see pawn taking f5, knight taking d5, knight taking d5. We have a rook a to d8, and it looks like, okay, wait a minute, I'm about to lose a piece, right? But we have the super saving e4 move. And this was why e4 wasn't played earlier, because we wanted to shift our g-pawn over. And so we do have pawn taking f5. And like I said before, Wesley So like plays the crap out of this. He does do a very good job of being very accurate in this position because it is very easy to go wrong. So we do see king up to e3, not capturing the pawn back. We know that when we're comparing pawns and pieces are definitely much more important. So he's willing to give up another pawn just so that he can save this knight and literally move the knight like anywhere. So we do have f6. A rook comes to g1 with check. This is like a tactics trainer. Like, you know, where are the checks? The checks are knight to e7, which is one of the top moves, and rook over to g1. Both of them work in this position. The king does sidestep over to h8. We see knight down to d3, and then the super point of what Wesley So is trying to do after the pawn takes on e4, he has just connected his knights together, and you know, he's going to be able to try to, like, you know, grab these pawns at some point later. And that's one of the things even I struggle with myself when I win a piece from somebody. Sometimes I don't play accurately. When I played in my tournament not too long ago, I got in a position where I had won a piece, but I didn't coordinate my pieces correctly, and I ended up having to give the piece back. So one of the most careful points in playing a game is when you have won a piece, trying to make sure that, you know, you are playing accurately after that so that you can actually have a full piece. So we do see rook over to g8. Rook takes g8. Wesley So is very happy to trade. He's like, hey, man, I'll play two knights against the rook. And he is going to have, you know, some pawns. So the rook takes on g8. We got knight taking f6. Rook down to g1. Knight taking e4. And after rook to b1, the knight is just in time to go knight to d3. And we are protecting our nice little pawn over here. We see rook over to h1. We got f4. And the whole goal in this position is to try to queen, like at least queen the f-pawn, or to force black to be in a position where he has to give up the rook for the newly, you know, queened or rooked or whatever, you know, pawn. So the rook does take on h2. We see f5. We're just literally just pushing that pawn home. Rook comes to h3 with check. We see king over to d4. So as you can see, like, white's king is super safe. Like, he has these knights just kind of blocking everything. And these knights are doing a very good job of, like, basically forcing this pawn up the board. So the rook comes over to f3. We see f6. We got h5. A knight comes to e5. We see rook down to f1. We see f7. So as you can see, we've literally pushed this pawn all the way from the 2nd rank all the way to the 7th rank. We see h4. Knight comes over to g5. The knight is wanting to come onto e6 because it does want to protect this f8 square. The rook comes up to f5. The king comes over to e4, which might look kind of strange because you're like, wait a minute, like, I'm just dropping my knight. But the rook has to maintain this file because if not, the pawn just literally just queens, and then that's just completely the end of the game. So that the knight is untouchable. So the rook just you know, retreats back down. And after we see the knight coming to e6, this is the position that Jeffery Xiong resigns, simply because the king literally can't really move anywhere close to the pawn. And next move, this pawn is promoting, and you're going to have to give up this rook. And they were kind of showing some lines like you can try to draw, but I mean, literally everything says losing. It's not, you know, a very nice situation at all. So, like I said, this was a position that he resigned. So, Malaka C. Wesley. So, I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by, and I will see y'all next time.